All righty. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 2023 Parent Empowerment Conference. We want to thank you for taking your time out to be present with us this morning so that we can provide you with new tools and information in your parenting journeys. This meeting is being recorded and is being offered in Spanish as well. Spanish interpreters, please give your information.
Si desea interpretación simultánea en español, por favor marque desde su teléfono 347-966-4114. Luego ingrese el código de la conferencia 936-124-715 con el signo numeral al final. Por favor recuerde mantener el micrófono de sus dispositivos en silencio para evitar el ruido de fondo y así garantizar la calidad de sonido para todos durante la interpretación. Gracias.
Thank you so much. So I want to introduce to you guys, as many of you may or may not know, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we're here to shine a spotlight today in addition to offering support. Today, we have two presenters with us, Stacy Marshall, who's the Director of Parent and Family Engagement for School Age for Include NYC. And we also have Patty Billings, who is the Community Education Coordinator, from the National Alliance on Mental Illness of New York City. We will have Stacy Marshall presenting Parenting a Child with Special Needs, And Stacy, I will go ahead and hand that over to you now. Thank you so much for joining and being willing to present.
Good, thank you and good morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to meet with you this morning and to share a little bit about Include NYC and the services we provide and how we support families and children with disabilities to navigate love, equity, and access. So let me share my screen and we'll jump right in. So today's presentation focuses on the topic of parenting a child with a disability. My name is Stacy Marshall, and as mentioned, I'm the Director of Parent and Family Resources for School-Age Children for Include NYC. And I am also a parent of two children who have had learning disabilities, one child who was in early intervention and had speech delays, and then my other child who has ADHD and some other comorbidities as well. That present learning challenges for her in the classroom. And so I come to this work with both my professional experience, starting as a New York City educator, as well as my experience as a mom of two children, actually, with learning disabilities and challenges. So I look forward to being
I'm sorry to interrupt. By interpreters, please slow your speed. This is a simultaneous interpretation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. So parenting a child with a disability. Who we are. Include NYC is the Early Childhood and Special School Age Family and Community Engagement Center, also known as FACE, and we serve all 5 boroughs in New York City. We are the leading source of training and information for young people, ages 0 to 26, with known or suspected disabilities, as well as their parents and guardians, and the professionals who support them. Our organization was first founded in 1983 with the understanding and belief that every young person should be fully included in the workforce, in school, and in the larger community, and should have access to resources, services, and supports that will help them to succeed. Many of our staff are both parents of individuals with disabilities, have family members with disabilities, or may have disabilities themselves. So not only do we bring expertise working in the New York City school system for many years, but we also bring our personal experience and our own empathy for others who are parenting children with disabilities and navigating the support systems in New York City. At this time, I'm going to switch my share and show you a short video clip from Lori Podvesker. She is our advocate and policy director, and she is also a parent of an adolescent with profound autism. And so she brings that lens to her work. And I think that her perspective will resonate with many of us as to the feelings that one may have in navigating this journey with their children. So allow me to switch my share, and then we will take a look at this video together. Just a moment, please. Okay, lost my view for a second, but I think you can see my screen, so here we go.
Based on my own experience as a parent, what has been most helpful for me is remind myself to just show up. And what I mean by that is being compassionate with myself and taking comfort in knowing I'm doing the best I can. And that some days it's less than the day before or more, and that's okay too. And that often, no matter how much I do, I still may feel like it's not good enough, or no matter where he goes to school or what activities he's involved in, it's still not good enough. And reality is, I don't think anything will ever be good enough. And some of that is just rooted on fear. And that it's universal, and that if we can all be gentle with ourselves, and talk to ourselves the way that we would talk to our best friend in relation to parenting kids with involved needs and developmental disabilities, that it's all okay. That's what I mean.
Don't.
I'm going to reshare the PowerPoint now, and just to kind of give a little context around what was previously shared. So as I mentioned, Lori is both a special education advocate as well as the policy director at Include NYC. And so she has participated in multiple testimony as well as video projects. And so that is a clip from a recent film project called Self-Advocacy Film Project. And if folks are interested in that, you can reach out to me after their webinar, and I'd be happy to share information about that important resource. And now I'm going to take us back to the PowerPoint presentation. Bear with me for just a moment. The tech is a little bit slow. So we've talked a little bit about who Include New York City is, and that we are an organization that helps to serve parents and families across all 5 boroughs of New York City. And we do that through multiple modalities. So first, we have our helpline, and that is a direct assistance service, of which we'll share the information for dialing and connecting with that service a little bit later in today's presentation. Stats from 2021 show that we've reached over 500,000 families and served over 14,000 families with calls into our helpline. Some of the helpline topics that bubble up most frequently include navigating the special education and evaluation process, school placement and IEP compliance, LRE, meeting preparation, post-secondary education and employment as part of the transition conversation, as well as turning 5, the important transition from pre-K to kindergarten. We also offer a robust series of workshops, and some of our most popular are today's topic, as well as family engagement, communication and culture, transition planning for after high school, as well as transitioning to kindergarten and from elementary to middle school, understanding your child's individual education program, promoting positive behaviors, and advocacy skills for families. We work with over 400 community partners at this point in time, And we have a pretty wide footprint and are known very well for our expertise in helping families to navigate special education in New York City and helping to improve academic outcomes for children with disabilities. We do this through the helpline, which I mentioned, and through offering workshops or webinars, such as our meeting today, as well as through family engagement and youth programs, and by providing through our website, through our newsletter, our YouTube, and our social media, news information and events that we are hosting or partnering with throughout the community. For today's presentation, the goal is to discuss parenting a child with a disability and to name and address the emotions that are involved in that. I will also share strategies for meeting these challenges, including creating a support system and using that support system, adhering to one's own self-care, which is one of the first things that parents flag as what falls off the radar when they're prioritizing their family. And we know this is even more acute for parents and guardians of children with disabilities. And building advocacy skills based for yourself as well as for your child to understand their disability, what they are entitled to in terms of accommodations and resources in the classroom, and how to provide the most appropriate educational setting for a child with disabilities to be as integrated and as independent as they can with the supports to which they're entitled. At this time, I'm going to share another video clip, and this is from a parent that we've worked with pretty extensively, speaking about the impact that Include has had on herself and her family. Excuse me just a moment while I switch my screen again. And I will share with you Dion's story.
Knowledge is power. And when you have power to change your child's world. AJ was maybe 9 months when I started seeing some decline in his development. He was about maybe 5 when he was actually diagnosed with autism. In AJ's IEP meetings, they were using acronyms that I just didn't know, and I would agree with all the recommendations. I would be the yes mom. I knew that I needed to make a change because our children's future depend on advocacy skills. Our children's future depend on how hard we go for them as a parent. When I realized that Include has an IEP training, I went down and I did it. The knowledge that you gain, this is more enlightening to me than anything else because I'm able to change my son's world. It really has changed my whole perception of what it is to be involved because I have been outspoken about his services and what his needs are. I see how beneficial it has been for him and for his development. I knew that I needed to take on something that's bigger than me and make a difference. I got an email actually from Include that invited me to a program called PLAN, and PLAN is Parent Leadership Advocacy Network, and it provides strategies for families on how to strengthen our advocacy skills. It's been inspiring for me because there are some days I go home and I just don't want to, I want to give up. But then when I come to a PLAN session and I hear these women, it just gives me the urge to keep going because they remind you of why you are taking this journey into being an advocate. I'm preparing AJ for his adulthood. So at some point, he has to learn how to have his own voice. And Include gives me the tools to be able to hand that baton over to him. What I'm doing right now, it's even taking my life to a totally different level because I have been providing information to other families from the knowledge that I have gained from Include. I want to be able to bridge that gap in our community. And it's just been gratifying to me as a mom to know that there is an organization that's understanding of having a child with a disability in this world, because it's a cruel world that we live in. And to have someone there that's not a psychologist or that's not an educator, but someone who understands from a parent standpoint that these are the struggles, these are the challenges And the advocacy skills and the knowledge that they give us, this is the answer. So with the knowledge Include has given me, I have the power. And with that power, AJ's world is changing. And he's now becoming the man that I want him to be.
So I like to share that video because Dion has, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm having a little tech difficulties this morning. I apologize. I wanted to share that video from Dion because I think it gives a nice perspective from a family that we have worked with throughout her child's life. And to see him to grow into his adulthood and his independence has really been an inspiration for many of our other youth with whom we engage, for them to see someone who looks like them and sounds like them and to see what they're able to achieve. And so now I'm going to share back to the PowerPoint presentation, and thank you for your patience. So the next thing that I wanted to touch on, now that we've talked a little bit surface level about some of the challenges and the ways that Include supports families, is the very understandable emotions that people feel around having children with disabilities. And I remember navigating some of this myself. And so one very common emotion that people feel is guilt. And that can be anchored in a number of different thought processes about what caused a child's disability and what role a parent might have felt that they may have played, understanding how the disability came to be, understanding what is needed for you to help your child and to gauge whether you're doing enough, which Lori touched on, how to take action to help your child, but wanting to feel that you're being realistic, keeping in mind what their capabilities and skill sets are, and managing your own expectations, and having instances where you feel guilty as a parent of a child with a disability because it never feels like enough. And so some of the processes that we like to share to kind of reframe this thinking in your mind are things to remember, such as there's always going to be a new therapy, there's always going to be a new diet, there's always going to be a new recommendation or a new piece of research around how a child could be helped and what a parent should be doing. There's always more to do. And so we have to know on a daily basis, it's one day at a time, and we do what we can. And what we're able to do, it is enough. You won't always get it right. Sometimes you have choices to make, and there is no specific direct answer other than you, together with your support staff and your support circle and family, making what you feel is the most informed and correct decision for your child at any point in time. Your choices may also not feel like great choices, but they are still choices, and whatever you decide for your child, as long as you are navigating it with them and supporting them through it with the help of organizations like Include, you can feel confident that you're doing the best that you can and that your best is good enough. And that nobody has the perfect answers. Everybody's just doing their best to make the right choices at that point in time with the information that they have. And let's acknowledge that sometimes maybe you'll feel like you made a wrong decision or a wrong choice, no matter how good your intentions might have been. And so with that in mind, no amount of guilt or blame is going to help you to feel better about that. But what we've heard from families with which we engage is it's knowledge about the disability that a child has, the way it presents in a particular individual, and what the child is entitled to as part of the public school system and under the laws that protect children with disabilities, such as the IDEA. And so having that knowledge and being able to advocate from a point of knowledge and strength does help families to have a little bit more confidence in the choices they're making and their own self-efficacy, that they're doing the best they can to navigate a landscape that we know can be challenging in terms of seeking evaluation, getting the least restrictive environment for your child, making sure they're receiving what they're entitled to, and sometimes having to self-check and say, this may not be the ideal that I picture in my mind for my child, but is it the most appropriate setting? Are the services related to all the entitlements that are given within the IEP and for that particular disability? And if not, what needs to be added or augmented or adjusted in that IEP to feel that your child is receiving what they're entitled to, and what is the most appropriate setting for them in order to have positive educational outcomes as students. In thinking about guilt, we also have to address very real fears that we face as parents of children with disabilities. And so I'm going to ask you to engage in just a quick activity with me and to take a moment to just think. And if you'd like to close your eyes to do it, that sometimes helps people to focus in. What do you most fear? What fears do you have about the way you're parenting your child? When you hear in your mind what you always dreamed of for your child, do you see that as being realistic? Do you see that as being feasible with the right support that a child growing into adulthood is entitled to, and that an adult will need to navigate once they have exited their school years? Having fears as a parent, as we know, is really normal. Not that I love to use that word, but it's very typical, and it's an understanding that parents all have once they have children, how it feels to be responsible for another, and then to add on the additional layer for parents who have children with disabilities, all the fears around that child's safety, making sure that they are going to be seen for who they are and the gifts that they bring, and wanting them to be supported just in the way that you would support your child, knowing that you have to trust other adults to be able to provide that support. And so there are a couple of different areas that people have fears in that fall into some specific buckets. And one of them is about the future. What's going to happen to my child when they leave the school system? What's going to happen to my child when the day comes that I'm not with them and by their side? Will they be able to be independent? What will they need to be independent? And so what we found in working with families extensively around planning for transition to adulthood is building a plan and having that come to fruition over the course of many years of a child's education, starting as early as entering middle school at age 12, but absolutely being initiated no later than age 14. And maybe at that point in time, you're not having conversations about specifically about schools or jobs, but you can be having conversations that are focused on the individual, allowing them to advocate for themselves, have some self-direction in sharing what are they interested in, what do they hope for themselves, and to really hear what they're saying and to think about how to make that into goals for their future, and to identify the supports that they will need in order to achieve those goals. Formerly, I worked for a nonprofit organization that provided supported living programs and day habilitation services and things of that nature for adults with disabilities. And I was always happy to see, but also a little amused at times to see how surprised people were that individuals who lived in the supported housing environment could cook their own meals, some of them, could take care of their own needs, but even more so could have a full adult life with a partner, many who got married, who pursued associates and other degrees in college, all with profound disabilities and all with services that can help assist them to be independent as an adult and to be part of the integrated community with supports that they need. So all of that goes into dealing with systems, educating yourselves, knowing your child's disability, looking for those teachable moments, and putting space between yourself and other people who are toxic or who don't have your same view on wanting to make as many things possible, feasible, and tangible for your child throughout their education and as they become adults. There is also often fear around the treatment of children with disabilities, particularly if they have a disability that in any way hinders their communication or relies on different modes of communication for them to be able to share their perspective. And that can be seen in fears for abuse, making sure that your child is not being emotionally, mentally, or physically abused, and teaching your child how to self-advocate, even within their disability, using the tools that they have in order to be able to communicate. And sometimes that may look like sign language. Sometimes that may look like being able to point to pictures and storyboards. Sometimes that may look like using an iPad oneself or having a voice adapting tool to be able to communicate. But we know that there's so many ways that children with disabilities can share and be self-directed. And so the more we know about their disability and how to support that, the more empowered that we can feel as parents. Lastly, on this slide, which is a little heavy on content, so I acknowledge that, there's a lot of frustration around working with individuals who have disabilities who may demonstrate what we feel is slow or no progress. And particularly in working with adults with disabilities and seeing what it's like when they make that transition from the public school system into adult support programs. For some individuals, progress is seen in a different way. It may not be that they're able to add to their skill sets. It may be that they're able to have more experiences, though, out in the community with different levels of support. And so progress does look different depending on how profound the disabilities are. But just as we advocate for our children in the classroom to be included, that's something that we want to foster in terms of self-determination and advocacy for children as they become adults. And now I want to acknowledge and name a very real challenge for all parents, but particularly those of parents of the children with disabilities. And that's exhaustion. Purely feeling that we're just running a never-ending marathon. There's no water breaks. There's no time to stop. And that can be detrimental to our own self as well as to the child that we're trying to support. And it can be very easy to say, oh, you have to create time for self-care and for that to fall off the radar. And I know that I have struggled with that myself in creating and holding space and seeing myself as being important, needing self-care and needing to rely at times on the help of other people in order to accomplish larger goals that would benefit from multiple resources and multiple folks devoting their time and their effort. And so one way that people tend to navigate this is to burn themselves out. And obviously that's not what we want to see. So Include New York City does have a direct assistance helpline. At the end of today's presentation, I'll be sure to share the slide so that people can take note of the information. And I believe the deck was shared with you as well. We do have services in Spanish as well as English and dedicated helplines for that purpose. And we can also provide translation services in a huge variety of languages supported by the New York City DOE and by our organization as well. So anybody across the 5 boroughs should feel free to call in if you're feeling as though you're exhausted, you need help, maybe you need respite support, or maybe you just need a listening ear, and our intake folks will guide you in the right direction to the right professional with the right level of expertise to address your particular challenges. With that in mind, though, there are small ways in which we can all focus on our self-care. And so for the last video that I'm going to share as part of today's presentation, I would like to share with you a 1-minute meditation activity for us to participate in together. So I'm going to, again, share my screen, and thank you for your patience as I do that. This 1-minute meditation will illustrate to you how quickly you can kind of center yourself and just take 1 minute in your day that could give you fresh eyes and a fresh perspective and make you feel like you've taken a moment for yourself. So to the extent that you feel comfortable engaging in this with me, I thank you for that, and I will launch it now.
If you're overwhelmed and your mind is racing, let's take a moment to breathe. Take a slow breath and focus on the brook. Let your thoughts or distractions come and go without trying to control them. Allow your body to start relaxing. Notice the different colors of green in the forest and the sound of the water. Watch the water move over and around the rocks in its path, and look how it changes colors and form in the process. Listen to the birds in the trees. Take a slow breath and let it out slowly and gently. Bring yourself back to your surroundings.
Thank you for taking that moment with me for us to regroup and give a moment for ourselves for self-care. And now I will reshare and finish out our presentation. So we've talked about guilt, and we've talked about fear and exhaustion. And so now I just want to navigate us through some of the other challenges that we face on a daily basis that contribute to these factors. Our children need a lot. Between evaluations, services, ensuring that they're in the right school placements, that they're receiving their therapies, they're going to their doctor and specialist appointments. We're the ones who are making these appointments, who are juggling these schedule changes and have to balance that with home and a work life. We also have so much mentally to keep track of when different things are supposed to happen, and it can be a lot. And it's important sometimes to name that and acknowledge it, and to think about through self-care, even just taking a moment to meditate, to plan for respite care, where you can know that you're leaving your child in professional, expert hands so that you can take a moment to regroup. And then finally, to delegate to others and to feel comfortable knowing that there are other people who can step in and be part of your support circle, and that nobody is able to do it alone. Particularly when we have children that have challenging behavior, we know that this can be an area where people are reluctant to ask for help, especially because they may feel like they have a difficult time themselves. And so how could somebody else be effective with their child when they maybe struggle? Our children's behavior can also bring out different reactions to what happens when we go out into the community. And that can become an excuse or a point of anxiety for folks who then don't want to go out in the community. And clearly we know that's not what's going to be most supportive for the individual to be integrated. And so when these behaviors bring focus not only to the child, but to us as parents and caregivers, it's important to think about how we describe a child's behavior and what names and titles we assign to the ways in which they communicate through behavior, because that's all behavior is. It's a form of communication, and it's letting us know a temperature check or an emotional reaction or a feeling or a need that the child does not have another way to express, doesn't know to express, or this is how it manifests with their particular disability or inclination in how they communicate. And so in navigating challenging behaviors, that's one area where support can be really instrumental in terms of positive behavior supports, having plans that are able to reward children and recognize when they are having behaviors that are positive, but also not seeing behaviors as either positive or negative when we're out in the community, simply as a form of communication that if it's not productive at that time, sometimes we have to leave a setting. And we've all been in that situation as well. And so the feelings that come up during that time as well as after are important to process and to think about next time what planning and what resources might help, but also giving yourself the grace to know that you can only do your best. Keeping in mind that we only do our best, we know that parents with disabilities have yet another set of challenges around the stigmas that can be associated with individuals with disabilities. And these can be seen based on societal expectations, ethical expectations, one's religious community or those of others, and cultural communities, whether it's our own cultural community or the cultural community of others that may see disabilities in certain outdated fashions, may use outdated and offensive terminology, or may as a whole just really not embrace and understand individuals with disabilities and how they are just people like us, and they may have different needs to be independent in their community, but they are able to do so with the correct entitlements and supports. We've made a lot of progress in this regard, but we acknowledge that we still have a long way to go. Parents have spoken to us extensively around social gatherings and holidays and how challenging and triggering and anxiety provoking that can be. And so through our own research and our own work with children, we know that the first step in that is to be planning ahead. Anticipate what might be challenging for your child, or pick up the phone and talk to the people who are hosting to get a better sense of the lay of the land, and then help to create a social story to walk your child through what the day may look like, and to plan for snacks, toys, comfort items, fidget toys, any items that may help your child to feel more comfortable in a different environment. It's also helpful to set expectations as best you can with family to help them to understand your child's needs. For example, I see you're serving a lovely meal and we all look forward to enjoying it. I am going to bring some items specifically for so-and-so. This is what they enjoy, and please don't take it any other sort of way. We appreciate the invitation and we appreciate your flexibility. That can feel uncomfortable to initiate, but can also help to alleviate tensions that can arise on the spot by kind of sharing some perspectives ahead of time about what you or your child might need in order to best enjoy the hospitality of others. In doing so, we also want to think about not just what we can do as parents to advocate for our children, but also support systems that we can be a part of and that we can help build for ourselves and our child to feel like we have folks who can be relied upon to provide supports that are in line with those that are helpful to the individual and that are helpful to us at a particular point in time. Sometimes you just need a moment to be able to go to Target and shop by yourself for 15 minutes and feel like you can check something off your list without having to manage behaviors or to have to step out of the store if the experience is not a positive one for your child. And so being able to ask even for simple help, could you help me so that I can have 15 minutes or a half an hour to focus on something? Could you help me with some advice and point me in the right direction to someone who's dealt with this issue? And we can provide that through our direct assistance helpline, as well as a parent group that we facilitate. And information for that can also be accessed by calling our helpline, sharing a little bit about yourself and your child, and indicating your interest in receiving an invitation to that support group. We've talked a little bit about self-care and the importance of even taking just 1 minute to meditate and center yourself. And some other ideas that families have shared with us that they have find helpful include, if you have an hour, which I know we often don't, but even 30 minutes, go for a walk. And maybe taking a nap sounds a little unachievable, but maybe you just take 30 minutes to close your eyes or to listen to music or to do something in order to take time for yourself to clear your mind and recenter. If you're able to take a half a day, if your children are at school and you can take a half a day from work or from your schedule, set a date to catch up in order to have time with friends, to explore the city, and just to be able to be out in the community yourself. If you have a whole weekend, which we know is rare, but that's something that can be pursued through respite services and other supports, treat yourself to some time away, doing what you enjoy as an individual and recognizing that that is important as well. In addition to providing self-care, coping mechanisms help us to navigate challenges on a daily basis and define how you are able to navigate a particular behavior. And so think about situations in which you have faced challenges or had to act on the spot and be flexible or pivot your plans or even cancel your plans. Was the coping mechanism that you used in that situation successful to your ultimate goals? And what advice can you give other parents who find themselves in a similar situation so that they can feel supported and empowered to navigate opportunities to be out in the community and to integrate with friends and family so that your child has that social interaction and those experiences that help them to be able to be a fully rounded person. We talk a lot at Include about humor. And of course, we're always careful to make sure that humor is not at the expense of others or in any way bullying or putting down or shaming people. But when there is something funny that happens, to take the time to have a giggle and to use humor as a way to help us to cope and form bonds with one another, and also just to release anxiety. Crying is one way of doing that, and that can also be really useful, and no one should feel any sort of shame or feel a way about that. But we found that humor as well can really bring levity to a conversation that's really loaded and help folks to feel connected to one another again if you're finding conflict around an approach or just having difficulty getting on the same page. What else can you do for yourself as a parent or a guardian of a child with a disability? You could speak openly with your physician about what your challenges are, what your needs are, and how you feel. And your physician can guide you in the right direction in terms of your self-care and how to stay on top of both your physical and mental health with their support or the support of other professionals. You can also join Include NYC's parent support group. And so we do ask families to call into our helpline just so that we can take some information in, because we do create a safe and secure space and get some very basic information about an individual and their child so that they can join that safe space and we can feel that we know who is there and that they have the right intentions for joining our group. We also are able to facilitate networking and connecting with other parents through school-based events and community events, some of which we host ourselves. For example, in the summer, we host an event in the Bronx called Outdoors for Autism. That is an event that we'll begin publicizing more heavily as the event becomes closer. It's open to the entire city, and it's a wonderful opportunity for parents to connect with other families who are navigating the disability network and who have children who are on the autism spectrum or those who present with other disabilities as well. I also encourage you to learn more about meditation and simple activities that are 30 seconds to a minute or as long as 5 minutes, 30 minutes, or even an hour to incorporate into your daily self-care activities to the extent that you can. Think about ideas that you might have for just little ways that you can help yourself to recenter, take a moment for self-care, and just take a moment to breathe. Additionally, we've mentioned and touched a little bit on advocacy in the conversation and the importance of self-direction for your child. Interacting with folks at all levels of your child's education, in the classroom, by attending school events, participating in forums such as this robust workshop today, and participating in the larger community with the Centers for Early Childhood and other organizations that support children with disabilities to learn about your child's disability through literature, through support groups, through organizations such as Include, and then helping to educate others, including family, friends, other people in your community, such as parents and teachers, and all of your healthcare and social service providers to share what you know about your child, how their individual disabilities are seen and present themselves for the individual, and how you've navigated challenging situations and what's been most effective. And then when you find yourself in a difficult situation, trying to be able to inform others of what to expect in that situation and be able to stay calm in that moment is facilitated mostly by knowledge and experience. So giving yourself the grace to learn more about your child's disability, how it presents itself in different situations, and adding to your toolbox over time to feel more empowered that you can handle whatever situation might come up, and to help navigate your child through that situation as well. And so I'd like to take this time to welcome you to join our online community. You can go to our website, www.includenyc.org. And we have a number of features that you can explore just as a viewer, as well as someone who wants to be part of our larger community. If you want to be part of the community, you can create a profile, and that will allow you to bookmark resources that we have to go back to them. You can also connect with us on social media. Include NYC is on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, etc. We also have announcements on our website and an ability to sign up to have emails with these same announcements sent directly to your inbox. And lastly, we call everyone to action to get involved with Include NYC and other supports in your community so that you know and feel that you are not alone. I mentioned earlier that I would share a slide specific to our helpline. So we offer direct assistance through our helpline Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We have 2 different phone numbers here. Both reach our direct intake team, and the 2 numbers allows us to take a much larger volume of calls in that way. You can find digital resources on our websites as well as our Include NYC YouTube channel. Subscribe to our weekly Navigator newsletter to get information about news and resources, as well as events that Include New York City is hosting, as well as partner opportunities as well. I thank you very much for following us on our socials and engaging with us after this call. And please know that, again, we serve all 5 boroughs. We serve parents, guardians, and children with disabilities from 0 to age 26. And we have expertise in a wide variety of areas through which our intake team will assign you to the appropriate professional to help you get the individualized support that you need to help yourself and to help your family to have successful outcomes in the New York City schools and in their transition to adulthood. And with that, I want to thank you so much for your kind attention and your patience with Tech Today. It was a pleasure to be here to first meet you, and I hope this won't be the last time that we're seeing each other. Thank you again, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your conference.
Thank you so much, Stacy. I do want to lean back into the chat. Do any parents have any questions or anything that they wanted to follow up with Stacy's presentation today? It was absolutely amazing, Stacy. Thank you. As a parent, I felt you, and it
Thanks.
resonated loudly with me. Thank you for the resources. And just as a parent, you know, going through those phases of guilt or shame or these fears, you know, that we do have that are very relevant to our children. It's great to know that there are support groups and, you know, individuals, a tribe that we do have to reach out to and make room for ourselves so that we can be supported. Did anyone have anything that they wanted to follow up with, Stacy? Everyone's saying thank you. It is wonderful. It's very great and resourceful, and I completely agree. Would definitely love to have you back.
For sure.
Let's see, I don't want to take anyone's, I'm checking the hands. Do we have any questions on the interpretation line?
No, I just asked. Nobody has questions.
All right, well, I want to thank you again so much, Stacy. All of the information that you provided, I will make sure that we have it back up for our parents, especially pushed out with the support groups and social media and things of that nature. Once again, we do thank you. We hope that you can stay and hang out with us a little bit longer. And as we move forward, you know, in removing these stigmas and helping us with the help that we need with mental health and with our children, I do want to go ahead and bring up our next speaker, which is Patty Billings. She works with NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness of New York City, as the coordinator for their youth mental health education program, Ending the Silence. Patty, along with co-presenter Nina Rondan, will present the parent-guardian version of Ending the Silence today. There are also Ending the Silence versions for students in 6th through 12th grade and for faculty and staff that work with these students. Patty is the mother of 3 young adult children and has lived experience with mental illness diagnoses as a parent and sibling. In addition, Patty has worked with school faculty, staff, and students for many years promoting mental health awareness. Last May, Patty completed her master's degree in community health education at Teachers College at Columbia University and started working with NAMI New York City shortly afterwards. I now give you Patty Billings from NAMI. Thank you so much, Patty, for being here and presenting today.
Thank you, Christy. I really appreciate being invited to speak with you. And Stacy, thank you so much for your presentation. I really learned a lot. I feel like our organizations are parallel in many ways in that NAMI is an organization that is built on peer-based experience. So we are focused on mental health, and everyone that works with NAMI as a presenter or as an employee has lived experience with mental health challenges, either through their own personal diagnosis or that of someone, their family member of loved one. So thank you very much for inviting us in. NAMI is dedicated to improving the lives of people affected by mental illness. We are not clinicians or diagnosticians of mental illness. We are people with lived experience. I personally have a deep history of depression and anxiety in my family, and my sister was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when we were teenagers. So that has been quite a while, and I have learned a lot through this experience. I also have a daughter, my middle child, who developed a life-threatening eating disorder when she was a teenager. And all of that experience led me into getting into the mental health field and educating about the importance of recognizing warning signs of developing mental illness. So today we're going to present NAMI's presentation for parents about some of the warning signs of developing mental illness and what we can do if we recognize those warning signs, and then resources that are available to people to reach out to, and that really the idea of building community support, that you're not in it alone, that there's a lot of support out there to help people as they navigate this. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Is everybody able to see the screen okay? Maybe a thumbs up if you can. Okay, thank you very much. So some of what we've been talking about today already is the importance of community, and that many of us, if we were to ask questions about facing different challenges, feeling overwhelmed by a child's behavior, or feeling ourselves worried that we're not doing enough or we're doing the right things, many of us would raise our hands. And it's really important to know that these are common experiences for all of us, and the importance of recognizing those experiences as being common and realizing that there are people out there that we can talk to and communicate with that understand that, and that makes that experience, that can make the experience less frightening, and we can seek help. So mental health, our mental health affects many aspects of our lives, right? For children, it affects their attendance at school, their physical health, the ability to learn, relationships, and reaching milestones. Mental health and youth, if we look at some of the statistics that are the current statistics, mental health is becoming a larger concern in our community, and 50% of children ages 8 to 15 experiencing a mental health condition do not get help for that, do not receive treatment for that. And the largest reason that we talk about, the reason that people aren't seeking the help they need, is the stigma associated with mental illness. Half of all lifetime cases of mental illness begin by the age of 14. That is why NAMI's programs are directed towards 6th through 12th grade students. That's this program, because a lot of mental health concerns start to develop during this time. So we're trying to address the developing signs, but also create coping skills and ways of having tools to deal with these before they begin. So when we say mental health conditions, I use the term very broadly, mental health conditions being like an umbrella term to go over diagnosed mental illnesses. Diagnosed mental illnesses are a smaller category within that broader definition. So these are examples of some of the most commonly diagnosed mental illnesses. We're not going to be talking about diagnoses today. The main thing that we really want to talk about is that they're very common, and the warning signs of these things developing. So there are 4 steps to really early intervention with this: knowing the warning signs, reaching out and responding when we recognize these signs, working with school staff and your child and your resources, and providing, and at the end we provide resources and support. So these warning signs, some of the things to recognize are the intensity of how severe symptoms are, the duration of how long they last, and the level of distress. How much are they impairing daily function? What you may see at school and at home are different. And I believe you may have, this experience already. As parents, what we see at home is much different than what behaviors they might be seeing at school. So if they are at school, they might be responding very emotionally or being violent, and at home they might be isolating more or being not engaging. some of these warning signs, extreme difficulty concentrating or staying still, that puts a person in danger, might actually be a sign of a developing mental health condition. Intense worries or fears that get in the way of their activities. If you look at these lower ones here, these are three really what we term negative coping strategies: throwing up or using laxatives or not eating to lose weight, and significant weight loss or weight gain might be signs of a developing eating disorder. Using alcohol or drugs excessively to numb some other feelings that they don't know how to deal with. Trying to harm oneself, attempting suicide, or making plans to do so. Self-harm, all of these three are really what we refer to as negative coping strategies, because they may numb the feelings that are overwhelming and difficult to deal with, but if you continue with these behaviors, they will be harmful to the person. So we really try to focus on building tools that are positive coping strategies to help us deal with these overwhelming feelings. As many of you may know, the suicidality and the attempted suicide rates are increasing in youth, and it has become a large concern. I do a lot of presentations in schools, and this is a concern throughout the greater New York area, New York City area. So it's definitely something we're trying to increase engagement on. We're trying to increase the comfort level of people being willing to have conversations about suicide and suicidality, so that we can normalize these conversations and children won't be afraid to reach out and talk to parents about feelings they may be having. So there are risk factors of suicide that we can go through: having previously attempted suicide, having traumatic life experiences, having symptoms of a mental health condition, and being involved in bullying in any way, either as a person who is being bullied or the person who is bullying. These are all put someone at increased risk that they may attempt suicide. But risk factors are different than warning signs. So just because someone is a higher risk doesn't mean that they will attempt a suicide attempt. The warning signs are talking or writing or drawing about death, talking about having no reason to live or being a burden, and a loss of interest in the things they care about. We often talk about giving things away that they don't think they will need. If we recognize these warning signs in someone, what do we do? I'm sorry, I went too far. It's very important with suicidality to reach out and respond as much quickly, and to take it seriously if some of these warning signs are going on. Asking the question, are you thinking about suicide, actually reduces the risk that someone will attempt suicide. So opening up the conversation, normalizing that conversation, letting them know somebody's paying attention, reduces the risk that someone will attempt to take their own life. If you're very concerned of an immediate crisis, don't leave them alone and seek help as soon as possible. The mental health hotline 988, or call or text the child's doctor and mental health services. The importance is to reach out to the community of support that's there. So when we're talking about mental health concerns and some of those warning signs, we're no longer talking about suicidality here. it's important to talk with your child, talk with the staff, healthcare professionals, and respond. Talking with your child, choosing a time to talk to your child when the child feels safe and comfortable, choosing a time, just like when we talk to adults, we want to choose a time where we're most likely to get the positive feedback that we're looking for, right? So you want to pick your times well, so that you are reaching your child when they're the most receptive to the conversation. Communicating in a calm and straightforward way, speaking at a level that's appropriate to your child's age and development level, and watching your child's reactions and slowing down or backing up if your child becomes confused or upset. Listening openly to let your child and let your child's feelings, let your child express their feelings is really important. When we talk about mental health, we are not trying to solve our children's problems. We're trying to listen. We are there to listen, and we are there as ways to get help, but we don't have to fix it. We don't have to fix everything, especially as children develop into teenagers. There is some self-efficacy that we need to respect with children, to allow them to address their own concerns, but to be there constantly as a sense of support. We encourage parents to try to avoid dismissing how a child is feeling as routine or something that will get better on its own. We all go through things like this sometimes. You'll be okay. These are dismissive ways of, when our children come to us with challenges, sometimes we just want it to be okay. And we may be in denial that there's something going on with a mental health challenge. So it's really important to try to fight that urge to fix it, or deny that something might be a mental health challenge, and move forward with listening and really hearing what they're trying to say. Asking questions that will only give you a yes or no answer. I think we all have, as parents, have experience with this, and it doesn't really engage the conversation, right? So choosing your questions carefully. One of my children, when I text her on the phone, I will ask her a question. If I ask 2 questions, and she's like, nope, you get 1. You get 1 question. So if she's like, I will answer one question, otherwise I'm just kind of gonna let it go. So choosing our questions carefully, realizing that you might not have their attention for very long. Avoiding promises of confidentiality when we're talking to our children is really important. That honesty and avoiding that you can listen without reaching out to resources if need be. As a parent of a child who when my daughter developed her eating disorder, the conversations were very difficult, and I was a fixer, and I tried to fix everything. I thought that I had to have the answers, and I had to fix the situation. And she would tell me something, and I would say, this is the solution. And that was not good. But really, I needed to learn how to do, and some of you may have heard of the term motivational interviewing, is to ask questions and to listen, and to really try to hear what they're saying and let them come to the solutions of what might help them feel better. That is it's challenging to learn, but it's so powerful, and it also relieves some of the burden of carrying all that weight on your shoulders, that you always have to have all the answers. I've tried that in my other relationships too, and it helps tremendously. You just listen. We don't always have to be we don't have to have all the answers.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay. Oh my God. And I shared that earlier, but most specifically in New York State.
I'm not sure. Extra.
Samsung.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. Most of you may recognize that was Brene Brown talking about empathy, and I think it's really something that we learn as parents of children with special children. Every child is special. Some children are more special, and there's a connection and empathy that comes with having those really difficult challenges. And it's also a part of the community, and that the importance of peer support. So as we've talked about that peer-based model of support, and that is, that's why that's why we do what we do, that peer-based model of support. Talking with school staff, it's really important to share your concerns. If you're worried about their mental health, share your concerns with them. Establish communication channels. Find out what's going on at school and seeing if they're concerned too. Asking about classroom adjustments, if that is something that needs to, that you think would be helpful. Talking with healthcare professionals, sharing your concerns, including information. Many of you may have, experienced this before, and this is somewhat repetitive for you. You've had this. Talking about asking if an evaluation is needed, preferably with a specialist with experience with children's mental health. That's really important. Asking for referrals, reaching out to family, friends, and the school community, educating yourself, building your confidence so you can ask questions and advocate. And we'll talk about some of the some great ways to learn more information. Remember that you have a voice in your child's mental health care, as you all are advocates for your children already. The mental health piece is also important, that you can advocate for your child in that respect. So a nice quote here from Helen Keller: alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And that is really our model here at NAMI. Resilience and well-being, teaching your child how to make friends and connections and have empathy, setting goals and work on them at a reasonable pace. These all go into kind of those positive coping skills that we were talking about. Building this, making friends and connections and having empathy is really about building a social support system for yourself. Setting goals and working on them at a reasonable pace is trying to reduce expectations as to just keep going and overdoing it and not having downtime. Encouraging your child to maintain a routine, take breaks and have unstructured time, learn how to have a positive self-view. So when we're trying to fix so many things and you know, there's so many objectives as parents that we're trying to help our kids with, I think this slide is really encouraging us to take a step back and to breathe and to focus on some of the basics, getting enough sleep, eating, having downtime, and the importance of that with mental health. Help them see the good things in life, to help them get through rough times, that change is part of life, and how good it feels to help others. Also, what our children see us doing, they model that behavior. So it's really important for us to recognize that we need to be taking care of our needs and ourselves so that our children see that that's important. And I think as parents, it's really hard to make time for yourself. People give us ways to do it. Like, here's a meditation, here's this. And the meditation earlier was absolutely wonderful, especially because it was 1 minute. You feel like you can give yourself 1 minute to take for yourself, but it's very hard to feel like it's important to take time for yourself. And that's a mental health piece that we need to work on, to make time for ourselves and realize that by doing that, we're making things better for our children because they see us doing it and then they will do it too. So connecting with resources and support. How can NAMI help? NAMI's Ending the Silence program that we presenting with you now is our program for parents. We also have a presentation that we give to students. We come into classrooms, we ask students, we show them warning signs, we have conversations about mental health, and we really ask them to be willing to have conversations when they are worried about themselves or others, reaching out to a trusted adult, reaching out to resources, and building up skills to help them deal with mental health challenges. We also encourage them to talk to their parents, right, as one of those trusted adults. So as parents, that's why when I speak with you, I ask you to be receptive to that approach, and listen rather than trying to fix or deny that something might be going on. One of the most common things teenagers tell us when we come into their classrooms is that their parents will say, oh, you're a teenager. Everybody goes through that, you'll be fine. And dismisses that feeling. And I'm sure I've said that too. When the students said that, I'm like, I'm sure I've said that to my children at some point along the line. but it does dismiss their feelings, and it does reduce the likelihood that they're going to openly communicate with you about what's going on. So trying to breathe into that and listen and hear them. The NAMI basics class, I'm going to talk a little bit more in just a minute. We have a NAMI family support group. Our NAMI helpline is absolutely wonderful. Much as Stacy shared, our helpline and all the resources they have for disability resources, mental health resources, our helpline is fantastic. It is not a crisis line. It is an information line. We can provide lots and lots of resources, and it is Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. I cannot advocate for the helpline enough, because if they can't answer your question, they have resources and will direct you to the resources that you're looking for. But they also hug you when you call. I can't think of a better way to describe it. They hug you when you call. They listen. And sometimes people just want to talk when they call up. They just want to say, I'm having a really tough time and I don't know what to do. And they listen. And they do have resources that they can provide. They are not clinicians. They are trained responders, and they will provide resources and help. And then there's also our website. NAMI Basics is a 6-session program. It's a class for parents and other primary caregivers of children and adolescents experiencing emotional or behavioral difficulties, and is available free of charge to participants. All of NAMI's programs are free of charge. We have our support groups. I believe there might be 40 different support groups at this point. It is just a wide variety of resources, and I encourage you to check out our website for that. But Basics course is really powerful, 6-class instructions. And this is really, we do have to say that we are not experts in autism spectrum disorders, and it's not a focus of the class. This is really about mental illness diagnosis, mental health challenges. So if anyone thinks they're interested in Basics, the important thing to do is to talk about the mental health challenge first before talking about other diagnoses, because that is what the class is focused on, and that gets you into the class where you would learn more information. So that was a strategy that the teacher just told me. We do have to have that be the primary focus, and we need to realize that we aren't the best resource for autism spectrum disorders. We are mental health focused and mental illness focused. So additional resources that I would like to share. One, again, the NYC helpline. NYC Well is a wonderful resource. And I noticed that Christy shared a link to more meditations that were on the chat there. NYC Well has a lot of applications on their website that are vetted. So it's not just like going on, the internet and pulling up different apps and seeing how they, if you like this mindfulness app or you like this one, but on NYC's Well's site, they have a lot of them. They have them for children, they have them for adolescents, they have them for adults, and they've checked them out and think they're good. So I think that's a wonderful resource. A mental health hotline, obviously, if there's a mental health challenge, it is really important to call 988 rather than calling 911. 911 is an emergency line, but it does not guarantee that you will have a mental health professional responding to the situation. So you want to have a mental health professional responding to the situation, and that's why you would call or text 988. With 988, they don't immediately come. They assess the situation and talk with the person, and it can be, you do not have to, necessarily give them your personal information. People call and talk. It is a wonderful, wonderful that we now have 988 and mental health resources there. The Trevor Project, if anyone is a parent of a child that is identifying as LGBTQ, the Trevor Project is a wonderful resource available 24/7. This population has the highest incidence of suicidality and suicide risk. So it is really important to build those resources and realize that these resources are there. So with all of that said, I would like to introduce you to our young adult speaker, Nina Rondon. She is going to share her lived experience with diagnosed mental illness, and I will stop sharing my screen. Nina, you're there? You ready?
Yes, I'm here and I'm ready.
Thank you.
I hope everyone is having a good morning so far. My name is Nina, and I'm going to share my story about what it's like for me to live with a mental health diagnosis. So I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I graduated from Syracuse University, and I'm currently a freelance writer, content creator, a blogger, a workshop host, a mental health advocate. I've been volunteering with NAMI NYC for almost 4 years now, so that's really exciting for me. I also have my own Etsy shop with motivational mindfulness stickers and reflective worksheets. And I'm also a community manager with a wellness social website called The Mighty. Oh, sorry. So I love writing, creating quotes, making stickers, writing poems, thinking of projects, and I share it all on my blog, Sparkly Word Tanks. So growing up, I was a perfectionist. I especially loved to go above and beyond in middle school and high school, which meant getting straight A's, perfecting all my assignments, and doing really well on tests. I was strict and expected a lot of myself at a young age. I suffered from low self-esteem, and a lot of my self-worth came from overachieving. I thought that by being perfect in everything, I would somehow feel better about myself. Oftentimes, I felt alone and didn't know who to talk to, which led to my first depressive symptoms. On the days I felt most alone, I isolated myself and didn't speak to anyone for days on end. I continued with my perfectionism up until my senior year of college, where I started feeling those anxiety symptoms. So taking care of myself, which meant balancing schoolwork, remembering to eat, and getting a good amount of sleep, all became hard for me. I found myself putting schoolwork first because I thought that was more important. But I started to worry a lot. I worried about how I was going to complete all my assignments, about my family back in Brooklyn, my lack of motivation, a big research project I was doing, and I dreaded the thought of each day not being able to give my best. The defining moment I remember at around the time I had to take the GRE, it's kind of like the SATs for graduate school, is when I felt my anxiety show itself. I was constantly nauseous, I had zero energy, I didn't sleep much, life felt like a blur, and I was constantly worrying about my future, who I was going to become, and what was actually happening to me. At my worst, I felt disconnected from myself. I felt like a zombie. I was simply existing and I had no idea how to feel. I was numb. I isolated myself and stopped talking to everyone. I went to class, went home, did schoolwork, all on autopilot. I just kept going, pushing myself to my limit. I then started to experience daily panic attacks from feeling constantly overwhelmed and overworked. My thoughts were always racing and I found it difficult to calm myself. I was exhausted all the time. One of my academic counselors was the first person who suggested I go to the counseling center at my school, but I didn't want to at first because I thought I had to just get it together. Because I grew up in church, I was told to pray everything away. If anything was wrong with me, I blamed myself and I thought I had to fix what was wrong on my own. I told myself that I didn't need anybody's help. Deciding to go to the counseling center was the first step I took in understanding what was happening to me. But it took a couple weeks to convince myself to start going. When I started going to the counseling center for a little while, that counselor suggested I go to psychological services for more stable and longer therapy. I didn't like going to therapy at first because I didn't think anything was wrong with me. But the more I talked in both places, the more I learned the impact of my experiences on the anxiety that I felt. So something major I learned from that semester of therapy was how mean I was to myself. How I spoke to myself was strict and was limited. I had so many expectations and I never was proud of my accomplishments. Realizing all I realized was hard, but it made me more aware of how to begin to recover and be gentler with who I was. I wanted to be more active and loving myself. The year after I graduated college was the hardest year for me. I was excessively worrying all the time. I was nauseous almost every day. I isolated myself in my room often. I had nightmares. I experienced insomnia at night, but slept during the day for the first few months. So during this time, especially at night when it was quiet, I found myself writing everything I was feeling and all the memories that hurt me. What I learned in therapy in terms of how I was speaking to myself opened my eyes to new ways to look at my past experiences. So why I became a perfectionist, who I wanted to be, and how I actually wanted to feel. The first step I took in my recovery was admitting to myself that I had these anxious and depressive symptoms. After that step, after I stopped ignoring those symptoms, trying to just wish them away, I felt really relieved. So writing became my tool of healing. My blog, Sparkly War Tanks, allowed me to write all the negative thoughts I had about myself, but instead of believing those thoughts, I reversed them into something more positive. So I created quotes, poems, notes, bulletins, and creative prompts to remind myself to keep going every day. My new motto is to always remember to be gentle with myself and my journey. So here's an example of one of my stickers with a mantra that I practice, and it says, like a butterfly, I allow myself to transform more into who I am every day. I will learn through the challenges and never give up. I acknowledge that transformation takes time and patience. I am ready. Around this time is also when I started writing articles for The Mighty, and this became the first way I connected with others who also experienced anxiety and depression too. After I started writing articles, I became more comfortable talking with my family about everything I was going through. I didn't keep my mental health struggles to myself as much, I isolated myself a lot less, and I used my voice a whole lot more. So success for me is connection, compassion, and empathy, both with how I am with myself and with others. I'm now a huge supporter of mental health and mental wellness and want to show others that it's okay to reach out if they need to. Back in 2018, I started planning, organizing, and hosting mental health events with the Mighty. And in January of 2020, I started volunteering to host the Expressive Arts with NAMI NYC. These events help me to be more open and creative with others about who I am and how I want to become more and more of myself in this recovery process. I also got my certification in mental health awareness, mindfulness, life coaching, and journal therapy, and I'm currently working on my shadow work certification. So I'm learning to use meditation, breathing exercises, herbal tea, therapy, and creativity to help relieve those anxious and depressive symptoms I still feel sometimes. But I sleep a lot better now though, so that's good. So the diagnosis of persistent depressive disorder and PTSD did not stop me from advocating for myself and helping others to advocate for themselves too. As I use creativity and a holistic sense of health and wellness, reflection, and being mindful of how I'm speaking to myself, I'm on the road to radical self-acceptance, loving every single part of myself. You deserve to love yourself fully too. It's okay not to be okay sometimes, and there's no shame at all in asking for help. One message I would have told my younger self was to ask for help sooner. If you or anyone you know feels alone or has a mental health condition and wants support, it's okay to ask for help. There are resources and people who care about you. You deserve to feel better. Thank you guys for listening to my story.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for sharing. I always enjoy presenting with Nina. Wonderful. And you definitely shared a lot of self-care that you've learned and how important that it has been in your journey, which is really powerful, I think. With that, I wanted to ask if anyone has any questions about what we've talked about here in terms of mental health.
Yes, Patty, I actually have a question from earlier in your presentation when you were talking about ODD, ADD, different things that can happen with mental illness. One parent said, can this also be caused by hormonal imbalances? I feel like teenagers experience with more of these issues when hitting puberty.
Yes, and like I said, I'm not a clinician, but I have done enough research into this area is that puberty is a huge factor in why these develop at that time. Yes, and it's more than hormonal imbalances, but it's how the brain is changing. The way we think changes during puberty, how the brain function changes during puberty. And hormone production changes. So there's a lot going on, and yes, it definitely has an impact as to why many mental illnesses begin during that time period. Absolutely.
Quick question, Miss Lindsay, I'm not sure if I'm asking your question correctly. She says, is it called a condition? And if so, why? Which,
So
if you want a question, go, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think she might be saying, because I was talking about mental health conditions and mental illness diagnoses. Sometimes I tend to use the terms interchangeably. Some people, I think there's some, to avoid stigmatizing language, will try not to use the word mental illness, the words mental illness, because there's stigma associated with that term, right? But in my perspective, to normalize conversations, you can use whatever terms you need to I don't want to remove words from our vocabularies, right? So if someone has, when I say mental illness, I'm really referring to someone who's gotten diagnosed with a mental illness. There are many, many people living with mental health conditions that may be mental illnesses, but they haven't been diagnosed, right? So when we talk about, like with the basics class, parents of children, the children do not have to be diagnosed with a mental illness for them to come to the class. But if they're facing mental health challenges, then that's a mental health condition. Okay, so anytime somebody's facing a mental health challenge, we consider that a mental health condition. And that might be long-term, it might be short-term, but it's really important to address it regardless. Okay? So mental health condition, broad term, maybe more politically correct term, mental illness, more a subset of that, and diagnostic. Nina, would you agree with what I said?
Yep, I agree. And also when I think about the words illness and condition, I think about how much it kind of we kind of talked about it, how much it affects your daily functioning, and then kind of the way that it affects the way that you live your life. So when you think about like illnesses, like other physical medical conditions, how we kind of talk about it to the students, like mental health conditions / illnesses, if you want to talk about it interchangeably, is the same thing as having like diabetes or high blood pressure, where it's impacting you in some way, is impacting your health in some way. So we consider it like an illness. But I really like the way how you said we use the word illness when it's diagnosed. So you're saying like, hey, I have this diagnosed illness and I have to treat it. I'm in a treatment plan for it. While we looking at the overall term of mental health conditions and mental health in general, we're kind of talking about how mental health is functioning in our society. And sometimes those challenges come up, and how are we navigating that conversation by talking about mental health and mental health conditions.
I do want to say thank you for both, Nina. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your honesty. And with it being Mental Health Awareness Month, I think it's so huge that people know you're not alone. And some of the things that you're feeling, a lot of us are feeling them when it comes to being overwhelmed or trying to be the perfect parent or getting all of these ducks and dots in a row, and you just kind of need to breathe, and just you guys coming in and telling us, remember, this is how you breathe, or Nina having your platform. If you could put it into the chat, I would love to be able to give that as an additional resource for our families that are here, for the families who will watch this recording. Our co-president, Amy Tsai, is here. Amy, I was going to read your comment in the chat, but feel free to unmute if you wanted to say it instead. I don't know if she can speak, but
sure, I am here.
Go ahead.
I apologize. I was monitoring the Spanish room. And so I just want to say thank you so much, Stacy. And I know Stacy had to leave. Patty and Nina, your story is so powerful. I think it really reflects on who we as a human, as a parent, as an individual in society, and how we ourselves need to take care of ourselves, but also like what will affect our community when it comes to mental health. And it is really difficult, I think, in this time and age where so much of the social emotional is not being addressed, and where's the support and the stigma around, where do we fit in, especially our young youth who are developing and trying to figure out who they are in the world and who they want to be and how comfortable they can be and how acceptance that the world can offer them. So I just want to say thank you so much, Councilmember Angel, for bringing this parent empowerment conference to the space. I know that's really important. It is a Saturday, so everyone has multi duties. So not everyone is able to participate, but we will definitely, like she said, we'll post this so that there's so many of our community can really see your presentation, hear your stories, share the impacts, and really relate to it. I think each and every of us may have a difference, but we can all feel the same feelings of what it means to go through life through these different chapters. So thank you so much, Councilmember Angel, and 2 other council members are here in support. And I'm glad that we can open up this Saturday to share this. So I will turn it back to you, Ms. Angel.
Thank you so much. Did either of our council members wanted to say anything today? Thank you so much for joining. I'm truly glad that, everyone's here and we're able to get this information together and present it for you guys. If we don't have any further hands, I do want you guys to know that this will be on our social media. It will be on the council's YouTube, as Co-President Sy did mention earlier, and we'll make sure to give out the PDFs or the presentation materials for those of you that want it. It will be posted on the council's website, and we will try to share that again on social media. Again, thank you again for spending your time this Saturday. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you to the Spanish interpreters.
A los intérpretes de español.
All righty, and with that, if we have no more further questions, we will go ahead and release our interpreters at 11:43 a.m. Thank you. And everyone have a joyful, great Saturday. And remember to remember yourselves. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. So just try to keep the mask on yourself and push forward in the way that we can, and just know that we are here to support you. And if you need help, email us always, D75council@schools.nyc.gov. And we shall see you guys soon, hopefully online. All right, thank you and have a great day again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great presentation.